Show me by raising your hand. Who's ever heard the word copyright? Who's ever heard the word infringement? Who's ever heard the word plagiarism? Who's ever heard the word license? Well, today I'm going to teach you about these terms. For those of you who have never heard any of these terms, I hope you'll leave with an understanding of them. For those of you that know some of them but don't know others, I hope that I can make the definitions of all of them clear. And for those of you who already are familiar with these words, I hope to give you an even better understanding them because sometimes they can be a little bit confusing. So let's get started. We're going to start off with a little video that I made to help you maybe understand a circumstance where you might have an experience with copyright.
I think we should use Wordle to make pictures for poetry. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Mr. Smith, can we use Wordle to make poetry pictures today? Yes, I think that's a great idea. I'll go get the laptops. Hey, why didn't you tell him that? That was my idea.
It's not that big of a deal, is it? We're still gonna have fun. No harm, no foul.
It hurts my feelings.
Have you ever had something like this happen to you? Have you ever had an idea that someone else uses and says it's your own? Or actually their own. I remember one time when I was in 4th grade like you, and my friend and I were talking about our science fair projects. I was very excited about my project because I had the idea to make a ramp for my hamster to get up to her house easier. The next day, I heard my friend telling the teacher the idea that I had told her about the hamster ramp, and she was acting like it was her own idea, but it was mine. That's not fair, is it? It's not only fair, but in a lot of instances, it's against the law. Today, I'm going to talk to you about these laws. So, when people have an original idea, one that they are the first to think of, or a picture that they drew that they thought of all on their own, they oftentimes get a copyright so that everyone knows that they thought of it first. To get a copyright, they must fill out official paperwork. Once they get this paperwork, people can't copy their idea without giving the person who made it credit. This copyright comes with copyright laws that protect their ideas as well. So we have copyright and we have copyright laws. Because there are a lot of different types of ideas and people that are protected, there's a lot of different things that the law falls under. Some examples of things that can be copyrighted or protected and not copied from one another are authors. Authors are protected because their books, stories, poems, graphic novels, they can't be copied. You can't take an idea that you found from a book and write your own book about it. That's just copying someone's idea. Musicians, that includes musical works and the words to music. Songs like you hear on the radio. I can't go take a song that I like on the radio and then record it with my voice singing and tell people that I wrote it on my own without giving the person that wrote the song credit. Even dancers can have copyright. Either dancing that's done on a stage, music videos, or a dance class. I have a friend who choreographs dances. That means that she listens to the music and she makes up dances and teaches them to people. And then these people go take their dances and they go to competitions and they could win a competition with their dance. Well, another dance teacher cannot teach their dancers the exact same dance and pretend like they made it up themselves and then win the awards for it. That just wouldn't be fair. Another person who's protected are artists. This includes sculptures, paintings, things you see on the internet. I can't go paint an exact replica. That means I can't go paint a painting that looks exactly like the Mona Lisa, that's a famous painting, and say that I painted it and get the credit for it. That just wouldn't be fair, would it? Also, directors and screenwriters are protected, the people that make movies. You can't go make your own movie and then sell it and then pretend like you wrote it even though you copied it. Also, architects are protected. Some buildings have a specific way they look. Someone can't go build the exact same building and pretend like they made up the design for that building. That just wouldn't be fair. There's many more examples, and they're everywhere in the world. So we know that these copyright laws are everywhere. When someone copies someone's idea, they break the copyright laws. This is called copyright infringement. That's just a big word meaning you're breaking the copyright laws. I have a good example for you here. See these two drawings here? I bet a lot of you recognize this one on the right. What do you think it is? Yes, Starbucks coffee. I'm sure you know, you probably maybe had Starbucks, or your mom or your grandma or someone you know has had Starbucks. So there was a coffee company in Korea that made their coffee shop's advertisement look like the one on the left. What do you notice about these two drawings? I noticed that they're the same colors of green and black and white. The writing is kind of similar and the drawing is kind of similar, but all the shapes are the same. So they're very similar. The company did this because people recognize the Starbucks symbol and associate it with good coffee. So if someone's traveling and they see this symbol, they might think it's actually Starbucks when it's actually the other company. The people that made this want people to see their coffee shop and think, like I said, that it's either Starbucks or their coffee is just as good. This is called copyright infringement because they're taking somebody else's idea and using it for their own benefit. Another word that we use when dealing with copyright is the word plagiarism. Who's seen the movie Jumanji, the new one that they just came out with? If you haven't seen it, in the beginning of the movie, one of the characters gets in trouble for turning in a paper that his friend wrote. In the movie, the character was punished because that's plagiarism. Plagiarism is when an author's original idea is used in another person's work and they're saying that it's theirs. This is the same thing as copying someone's work, pretending that it's your own. It can also happen if you use an idea you saw in a movie and write a paper or story and pretend like it's your own. You're just taking somebody else's idea for your benefit. In other words, plagiarism is copying something that's not yours and saying it is. And that's just not fair to you or to the person who actually wrote it. Red Skelton said the quote, "Imitation isn't the sincerest form of flattery, it's plagiarism." And not only is this quote in my slideshow true, but I also use some quotes here so that I can say that I didn't say it. You see how there's quotation marks and his name at the end? If I had just put that quote there and pretended like I wrote it on my own, then that would be plagiarism. And that wouldn't be fair because this is someone else's idea. And what the idea just means is that when you're like copying from somebody and you're copying them, it's not flattery. It's actually not fair and it's plagiarism. So not only is plagiarism not honest and not fair, it can also get you in trouble. If you use plagiarism, if you plagiarize whenever you're in school, you can get a 0 on your assignment. If you plagiarize when you're in college, you can get kicked out of the school. You cannot be able to go to college anymore if you plagiarize or copy somebody's work without giving them the credit. Also at work. This happens in the work world too. If you plagiarize, you can have to pay fines or you can even get fired and lose your job. So it's a pretty important thing to make sure that you're following the laws and the rules. So, do you think there's any time that you're able to do somebody's work in your own work to use it? The answer is yes. You just have to make sure that you tell the people reading, watching, looking, or listening to your work that some of the ideas, words, or pictures aren't your own. There are 4 ways we're able to do this. One way is you have to cite your source in your paper so that you're showing that this is not your idea, but you're using the words of somebody else. And by citing, it just means you write it in your paper. Another way is to create a reference list to show where your information came from. Also, you can paraphrase your information. That just means you create a short summary of the information you use, but you have to be careful to not use the same wording, but create your own words. Also, The last way we're going to talk about right now is to use quotations like I did in a few slides back to show the reader the information you provided are not your own thoughts. Now, I know we're going to touch on this more when we talk later with our own papers about the citing and how we actually do that here in 4th grade. So, are you ever able to use copyrighted items? The answer is yes. Many times copyrighted items have a license where they can be used. There are many types of licenses, but today we're just going to talk about 2 of them. The other types are listed on your handout. There are Creative Commons and Public Domain. A Creative Commons license is one that allows anyone to use their work without asking permission. They have different rules, so you must check with each one of them. A public domain license is one where the public owns the right to the material, so anyone can use it, but no one can claim ownership. One time the copyright laws are different are when it comes to use in an educational setting. What's an educational setting? This right here is an educational setting. Anytime you're teaching others is an educational setting. Sometimes schools can use copyrighted materials that they are used for teaching, only when they're using it for teaching. So if a teacher copies a page of a book to use in her classroom, that's okay. But if you buy a book and make copies of it and sell it to your friends, that is not okay. So in closing, copyright is what keeps things fair. It's what gives the people that make things credit for the things that they worked hard on. And we want to make sure that we're really following these rules. Now we're going to do a little quiz so I can see how you understand what we talked about, and we'll continue talking about this as we do our research, and you'll continue doing it all the way through middle school, high school, college, and even in your career, because copyright is important because it keeps it fair.